since I'm here, let's talk about a little bit about fishing equipment, even though it's not mandatory or even really recommended unless you got a lot of experience and you kind of know what you're doing. Figured I'd touch on it because some people still want to include it like a small fishing kit. So the thing with fishing is it's not so simple, okay? When you got so many different areas as far as waterways, what different fish are in there, you know, you gotta be picky on what you do. So they got a lot of survival reels that you have nowadays. They don't have them here. I could probably find a store within the next day or two to get one and show you, but they're little automatic reels. You know, you pull out some line, throw a piece of bait on the hook, throw it in the water, and you tie that reel to a tree. So when a fish bites and takes it, it automatically reels it back in. You know, it's got a little spring mechanism. It's good and bad with it. You know, you're only going to catch small fish with it. Once the fish starts getting up to 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, you know, that thing's not going to work that well. And at the very least, it will hold them in that area. So when you come back, like, so if you set 10 of these, you can go out hunting or collect edible plants and stuff like that and come back, and hopefully at least one of them caught a fish, right? Without you having to be there. But the main thing about catching fish is to A, know where they're at, B, know what they like, then C, you got to have it with you. So the big difference between catching different types of fish and stuff like that, different, like, they have several rows of just different types of items to use to catch fish, okay? Like the power bait, for example, down here, okay? That is for bait fishing. You are putting a piece of bait on a hook, putting it in the water, and you're hoping and praying one comes by and bites it and gets locked on, okay? So when you're bait fishing, you got to know where the animals are at, or where the fish are at, and how to fish them, because you can bait off the ground or you can bait on a bobber, you know, where it's hanging from the surface. So if you know they're, and it all depends on the time of day and what the animal's doing, or the fish are doing, and the time of year also. When it's super sunny out, the fish are not going to be near the surface. They're going to be deeper down. So it'd be more beneficial to like set up a Carolina rig and throw the bait towards the bottom, and hopefully they're down where you throw it. You know, if you don't get a bite in 10 minutes, reel it in, move to a different spot, do the same damn thing. And you can spend 2-3 hours going clear around a lake. It's predominantly used in lake. You know, not so much in rivers, even though it can be, but predominantly used in lake. And so you can spend several hours going around a lake before you catch your first one, you know, because they'll group up and they'll be in area of lake, and then 2 days later they'll be in a different area, and a couple days later you'll have the sporadic ones that are just traveling too. But for the most part, once you hit a spot, like you're in, like you can limit out real quick. A buddy of mine went fishing one time. Took us 30 minutes to find out where they were, but once we found out where they were, the limit there was five trout. We both got those 5 within the next 15-20 minutes, and we were done. 45 minutes, we both got 5 trouts. We're freaking starting a fire. So, but bait casting could be good for those of you who don't know how to set up a Carolina rig or a bobber rig. Look it up online. I can't really show you here. I don't think they'd be too happy if I take this stuff out and start throwing it together. You know, but who knows? But the smellier the stuff, the better. You know, I like to find like this rainbow stuff right here. Okay, I like to find the one that says with garlic scent or anise, because that usually gets me my trout. So these are just the looks. They do have scent, but the one with the extra scent, like garlic and anise, extra powerful. They seem to work better. you need several different types of ones. So this is ones for salmon eggs. If you're in an area that don't have salmon eggs, they might be enticed to it. You know, you might have some success, but not as much as if you're in an area where there is salmon eggs, you know. So try to use, if you know you're going to a lake or something like that, try to use a scent that they recognize as food, because they'll come to it a hell of a lot quicker. You can still get them with this, but they'll come to it quicker. The garlic anise mix is just powerful. It draws them in. So don't really see it here, which is kind of sad. You got the ones that look like eggs, like this. As you can see, they look like eggs, sparkly eggs. This is for like crappie, you know. If you don't know what that is, that's what they look like. So you know, some of this is tailored towards a specific fish. You'll see ones that are larger, that have some nasty foul smell to it, for like catfish, you know. So you got to pick and choose depending on the area you're going to. The ones with like this one, shrimp, like if you're on the coast and in a river, oh yeah, oh definitely you can get shit with that. But those are more, you're throwing the bait out there and it's sitting and the fish is coming to it. Okay, when you got these little bugs, these worms, you know, this looks like little fishes. I'm sure they have ones that look like miniature frogs. If you're on the coast, you'll see ones that look like squid. Well, this kind of look like squid. Not too much, so let's see. You know, so with these, you want something that, you know, if you're going after a largemouth bass or some other predatory fish, well, all fish are predatory, you'll want it shaped like what it eats. So if it don't eat it, it's less likely to come to it, and you want to try to get ones that are scented too. You know, so let's see, I'm surprised they don't have any ones that freaking, I'm sure they all got some scent to it, but there's one that it's just drenched in sweat or scent. And you'll see the package, it's like super liquidy, you know, because they're held in that. They're held in that scent, and whenever you take it out of the water, it's lost some of the scent. So when you put it back in the bag, oh, here you go, like this. So when you put it back in the bag, it re-soaks it in that scent. So these are shaped like minnows, and I'm sure that's actual minnow juice. Resealable bag. So, you know, wherever you're going or in the area, you know, they go after minnows, like, might as well have something that not only looks like it, but smells like it. You know, a lot of people make the mistake of pouring this juice out. Don't. Keep it in there. And even if you lose all these, you can use that juice on other things, you know. Don't drink it. Please don't drink it. Okay? But you can use it on other types of baits and stuff like that. Even if you just got the power baits and it's starting to lose the scent, dip it in there and see if that helps. But again, you want these tailored towards whatever you're going after. If I'm trying to, you know, get a deer to come into me, I'm not going to hold the freaking, I'm not going to throw elk guts out on the ground and expect the deer to come in. It's not what the deer eats. It'll actually repulse it away. So, you know, when you're going after fish, you kind of got to know your game. When you use all these rigs, okay, as you can see, they're shaped and painted specifically like different fish, you know, and the fish are attracted to it. They got this front tongue on here that when they're swimming through the water, they kind of twitch back and forth. And you know, if you're pulling in and reeling in and letting it drop and sink in an erratic manner, like some of these are completely shaped like them, and they even have different body sections where they can twist and turn in the water. But when you're reeling these in slowly and being erratic with the up and down motions and stuff like that, they look like wounded fish. The vibrations are going to call the predatory fish. Like with these, like you're going after like bass and stuff like that, predominantly bass. Like you see how big they are. You know, that has to fit in the fish's mouth. So if you got a small fish, it's not going to go after that. You know, so take into account the size, take into account what you're after. You know, some fish people just catch and throw back because they're fun to. Bass, you don't really get a lot of much off of it. You know, I prefer trout because, you know, you can make a decent meal for one person out of one trout. But bigger predatory fish, you can even catch sharks with some of these if you're out on the ocean. And you use these to go out and go deep sea fishing. You know, you'll see some of these that are shaped like this, but they're like freaking 2 feet long. You know, so it's really important to actually know what you're going after. You got ones like this, when these are being reeled in, these little jiggers, the tail end whips back and forth. That adds the vibration, the motion. The noise, basically, for fish is the vibration in the water, so it attracts them. You have ones with double rigs. You have ones that are set up for trolling. I've seen people put in their survival bags rigs that are set up for trolling. You're not going to use that when you're fishing from the shore. You know, you need to be going like a mile or 2 per hour across the lake to really be effective with trolling. So you really got to know what you're doing. If you're not sure and you still want to do it, I'd say get some things like this, spinners. You know, you can use these to entice fish up from the depths during the middle of the day when they're all pushed down towards the bottom. It's something people don't realize, and it's shocking. I've known people who've fished for 20 years and it never occurred to them why fish go deep during a hot, bright sun. They think it's because it's cool water. It's not just cool because it's cool water. Fish do not have eyelids. It's too damn bright for them, so they go down. So things like this attract them because they're flashing. You know, they're making noise as you're spinning. You know, when I've been at lakes where I've caught a few fish with power bait, and then all of a sudden they stop biting. So after 20, 30 minutes, I take off the Carolina rig, throw a spinner on there. Within 3 casts, boom, I get one. Another couple casts, boom, I get another one. And, you know, I'm limited out. So, you know, their preference changed from being enticed by the smell to being enticed by the motion. And again, fish are predatory, so they get aggressive. So with spinners, they don't have to necessarily be hungry to attack it. You just may be throwing it close enough to them where they felt territorial, so they attack it and they get caught. Whereas with the power bait, they have to be hungry. If they're not hungry, they are not going for it. And there's a lot of things that can affect that. The temperature of water being too high or too low can change that. That's why whenever I go and I notice that I'm freaking absolutely killing them, I take the temperature of the water. I'm like, okay, you know, now I know what it's at. So whenever I go back to that lake, that particular lake, take the temperature of water. If it's about that, I can expect when I find them to absolutely kill it. But if it's 10 degrees higher, I know I'm probably not going to catch anything. Doesn't mean I'm not going to try, because I'm there for to relax and enjoy myself. But my expectations have changed to one to where I'm no longer expecting to really get anything. If I do, fucking great. So this is just some of it. Let's go into the other aisle and see what they got. So they got these. Again, people predominantly use these for bass. You know, you can use them for a multitude of things, but look at the size of them. It's got to be able to fit that in its mouth, and it's got to want to put that in its mouth. Okay? And these are all shaped like frogs, fish. These ones with these tails like that swim fantastically. Here's another one. You can see that tail on it. So you got some more frogs and different things, larger worms. You can always, in place of a lot of this stuff, you can just go dig up worms. You can go catch crawfish. You can go get different bugs and stuff like that. Yeah. You know. Let's see. Anything that stands out, like these are just mimicking worms. They got these long flat tails to when they're being pulled through the water. So these are ones you throw out and reel back in, throw out and reel in slowly. Or if you're in running water, that'll make them move and stuff like that. So tailor your fishing style to where you're going to be. Like these are, there you go, little June bugs, you know. That's why I like fly fishing, because you learn to set up your thing based on what the animals are, what the fish are eating. And you have thousands and thousands of different variety. And if you don't have that's there, you can always just catch a bug, tie it down to a fish hook, and throw it in. And you're more likely to get some. I've seen people do it, you know. I've usually always had the right flies to use. Here's your crawfish one. To be able to do that, but you know, who knows what you have. Here's some. These are more baits, but these are for catfish. You know, you got blood in this one, shad, crawdads, and they just grind them up and they mix them in this juice. Like these, like if somebody, like a kid, were to come by and knock it down, oh man, horrible smell. Yeah. So here's the bigger baits, like I was saying earlier, for catfish. You can see the size of them. Catfish are bottom feeders, so this has to go to the bottom. I've heard people who've caught them towards the surface, but that's rare. That's the exception. Don't worry about it. So these dough hooks, these right here, so these are treble hooks, and they got these springs on them, basically. That's what they look like, right? And that's to where when you put this dough stuff in there, it holds on and is less likely to come off. So, you know, important to have. Just little marker indicators. Some people use flags. A lot of people are starting to use these floaty tubes because they can just throw it to the bottom, and that's floating on the surface. When they see it moving around, they know a catfish got it, and they go over to it and reel it in, or well, go over to it in a boat or a canoe and pull it in. Some more spinners. Spinners cast out and retrieve in a nice, smooth manner. It's not like some of the other ones, the lures that you're doing erratic motions with spinners. You can, but in order to keep that metal piece spinning to really be reflecting light and making noise, it generally has to be consistent, and you do not have to pull it in as fast as a lot of people think. Okay? So these jig heads, these are the ones you're putting bait on, and they're weighted, obviously. And I've used these a lot with bobbers and things like that. When I'm setting up Carolina rigs, you know, you have the bullet weights. If I see any pre-manufactured Carolina rigs, I'll show you exactly what that is. Obviously, the sets of hooks you get, You want to tailor it towards the size of fish, you know, decent sized fish, smaller fish. Here's your different bobbers. So if you're hanging bait from the surface, and you tailor the length of your lead depending on how deep you think they're going to be. These are great if you want to use bait, but there's a lot of moss and stuff on the bottom that you keep getting snagged up on. And so you just say, okay, the water's 8 feet deep down to the top of the moss. So I'll just put like a 7-foot lead on it so I know it's hanging off from that bobber 7 feet down, so it's a foot above that. So it's enticing the fish that are hiding in there to come up and grab it. So, excuse me. You got some of these other weights, sinkers. You got some of these that are pinch on. You know, these are easier to adjust because these you have to thread your line through. These ones you can just attach, just do a quick little knot. Swivels, like, you know, if you have a swivel on the end of your line, you can change out to spinners or Carolina rigs or even long leaders to hang bait from a bobber real quick. So I recommend those. Don't have to. Again, your gear, your preference. As far as hooks go, got the individual hooks, and then you have what's called treble hooks. For you that don't know, these treble hooks are 3 hooks wrapped around a single part. And those are too damn stuck together to really get a good clear view. So like that one right there. 3 different hooks, right? All wrapped around the same center beam. So these are great because what happens is fish, when they swallow the bait that's attached to them, it's stuck in their mouth a hell of a lot harder, 1,000,000 times harder than if you had a single hook. A single hook usually goes through one side. That goes through, you know, roof of the mouth, both sides. You know, I've never had one where a fish was caught with just one of those hooks. It's always been completely embedded in their mouth. They couldn't even open up their mouth to try to shake it loose. So I prefer treble hooks over single hooks. Okay, personal preference. I recommend it. These are great view right here. All right. See, it has 3 hooks, 3 little blades. They gouge into the mouth and get stuck. But you don't have to if you don't want to. You know, extra line like that, just a whole row. That's 2,000 yards of 8-pound test. Okay, 2,000 yards of an 8-pound test. That's a lot. You can, you know, with a stick and that, and you know, a hook and some weight, you can make dozens of fishing poles. You know, you don't need to have a whole nice reel set up or anything like that. You know, you can just wrap it around, like when you're trying to reel the fish in, just start wrapping it around the stick. You know, just make sure your knots are good, and fantastic. You know, there's a lot of people have the miniature poles that collapse down to like the foot tall. Not really important how, if you're gonna bring a pole, like because you got different spinning reels and bait casters and stuff like that. You know, if you know what you're doing, there's no real super difference between them. Bait casters are generally easier to cast with because it's just a push of the thumb. You can see all these monofilament leaders, different things. People afraid to touch a fish, measuring sticks. Again, more stuff for people afraid to touch a fish. You know, this for removing hooks. Don't have to have it. You know, you don't even have to have these. You know, I'm not really too worried because, you know, when I pull a fish in, I kill the fish, and then I take my multi-tool and I reach in, yank the hook out. It's going to tear out the inside of its mouth. It's going to be painful for it, obviously. That's why I make sure it's dead, so it's not feeling pain, and I'm not freaking, it's not shaking on the hook, and I have to, like, I get it caught in my finger. These fillet knives, not really important to have. Any good knife you can use. They make nicer looking fillets if you want to carry it, but they are strictly for making fillets. Like, they're not really good. They're so thin and so flimsy that they're not really good for doing anything other than making fillets. So let's see. Nets, you know, you don't need a net. Like, I hardly ever use a net. The frog spear, so you can put 3-pointed, so you can put that on a end of a stick. Go get some frogs. But as far as fishing goes, you have all these decent lines. Make sure it's rated for a higher than what your fish, you know, if you're expecting to get a 2-pound fish, have at least an 8-pound line. If you're expecting to get 10-pound fish, at least a 30 or 40-pound line, you know, because the last thing you want is your line to snap and now you just lost. You just lost your meal. Sad day. Makes you want to throw all your crap in the freaking lake. So, you know, I know people who have these extra little reels and they just throw them in their bag. These are not automatic reels. These are ones you can just tie onto a stick and now you got a fishing pole. Nothing wrong with having extra line. If you got thick enough line of this extra line, like I've actually, we played around with it on my buddy's ranch, and because he had ranch raised turkey, and I told him, like, I wonder if we can use one of these to make basically a snare and get one of the turkeys. And he said he was down, and so we took 50-pound line, and it wasn't a huge turkey, but it was probably, you know, between 15 and 20 pounds after we gutted it and took everything off. So it was a good size, and like, they don't really see that. You just put a line of oatmeal out on the ground. We had the snare there, and freaking just waited it until it was walking through, stuck its head through the snare, and I yanked on the freaking stick, and like that dug into its neck. It cut into its neck, and the more it flopped around, the more it was cutting in. So, you know, if you get strong enough stuff, it can be used for more than just fishing. You know, used for snares for like squirrels, and like a lot of people like use 550 cords for snares and stuff like that, and it's 350 yards right there, whereas 350 yards 550 cords freaking huge. It's bulky and it's easier to see, and this is also cutting in as it's strangling it, so you got multiple uses for it. And you can use it, like I've had ripped jeans on the side, and I've used the length of it to kind of stitch it back together, and worked, you know. So multiple uses for that. I'm sure if you got small enough, flexible enough ones, you can actually use it for stitches too, even though it's gonna kind of be a little bit more painful. There's different types, you know. This is monofilament, so it's just a single line. There's ones that are braided in here, and those braided ones, like if you run them across your finger, you can feel all those tiny little bumps, and they cut in. But they, you know, so they do damage some things that you're fishing with. So you got to be careful if you're gonna do like a lot of people. You'll see them, they'll wrap their hand around the line to pull the fish up, so the weight is not on the pole, and so it don't overbend the pole, and then it ends up cutting into their hand and stuff like that. So you got to be careful with braided line. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, But you see how bumpy that is? You know, so it basically kind of looks like that. But that is braided line. You know, and so when you're wrapping your hand around it to pull something in, like survival situation, you know, if the fish takes off as a decent sized fish, you got to realize that line's going to cut a little bit more than you want to into your hand. And here's some that's sticking out, but if you're able to feel it, you kind of see the bumps on it. But if you're able to feel it, you could feel it. But braided line's pretty strong, especially you get the good stuff. Come in nice small packages. So fishing's an option. It's always an option if you're around water. And some of this stuff, again, you can absolutely do. It's multi-purpose. You don't need all the fancy stuff like these traps. Like if you know how to make traps, like these are more just more fish buckets, but the fish swim into these. You can see where the fish swims in and they can't get out most of the time. You know, they're fairly easy to make. We've been making them for as long as we've been alive. Humans have. Here's a little minnow trap. You can see, made out of just a little plastic with a funnel. That's all it is. So, you know, if you have like a peanut butter jar that you're done with, and you're in a small like oil funnel, you can make this relatively easy. You know, granted, it's only $4, so it's cheaper than both those things. But I'm just saying, you know, just as a fun little project, if you have the extra stuff instead of just throwing it away, you can make that. Here's freaking, oh, this is a casting net, 6 foot round net from, I think. Let's see. Yeah, 6 foot radius. You know, if you feel this because of the weights that you see there, because when you throw it out, it's all centered. When you throw it out, it spreads out, hits the water, sinks down, and when you start pulling it in, those weights suck in together, and it, boom, pulls all the fish in. You can get a lot of little fish with this. You can see this is designed for little fish. I can barely stick my fingers through there. So you get a ton of minnows with these. But you could also make them bigger to get bigger things, but you're going to need stronger stuff. And for anybody who wants to make one of these with like 550 cord or something like that, or if you get bank line, you want to make these, be prepared to do tens of thousands of knots. Ask me how I know. Like, I've been there. You know, I've done a lot of different projects where I'm tying knots for 2 hours straight. My hands are hurting, and so I take 2-3 days off and come back and start tying more, you know. So, and repeat that for several days, you know, of work. So you could be spending 6 to 10 hours just tying knot after knot after knot after knot. So it's a lot easier to buy them. You want to have fun and try to make one, even a small one. You know, they're fun. You learn a lot. Kids enjoy it. Oh, here you go. You can see one of those throw nets opening it up, right? Wonder if it has a better picture on the back. Yeah, there you go. Shows a little kid doing it. So he's securing one side to his arm, grabbing the center, grabbing a large part of it, and does it in a flinging motion to where it opens up like a parachute. Poof, lands, sinks down, grabs. Now, these right here are a lot different. You know, you're basically scooping them up. Okay, that's fine. If you look at like on the West Coast, where a lot of native tribes use nets, you know, with the salmon runs, and you know, freaking those are big fish. You know, they could be 30 pounds. You get the big old Chinook salmons, they get over 50 pounds easily on the small end. And so you got to have very strong material. There's natives that made nets similar to this, but much larger, much longer handle, 10 to 15 foot handle, and they'll stand on the edge of waterfalls. And as the fish jump up, they try to catch them, try to reach down and catch them, basically. So freaking scooping down and try to catch them. And that requires a lot of fast reflexes. So that's an option for, if you got bank line 550 cord and you want to have some fun and you see that fish are jumping, give it a shot, man, because all you got to do is get right once and you got a 30-pound fish, like, you're eating good. So I won't knock fishing as a survival tool if you get lost, hurt, injured, whatever. But it's not a go-to thing for me, because in my bag it's more general as far as different environments. And I can always find plants, but you can't always find a place where there's fish, And if there's plants, there are animals who eat those plants. And if you know how to trap, then if you have 550 cord or your own homemade cord, or even like some of this monofilament or braided line, you can make your own snares to get those animals. Or if you know how to make hunting tools, you can get those animals. Or if you have a weapon on you, you can get those animals. Much easier, because you can actually see those animals and go after them. Fish, unless they're jumping, unless they're near the surface, you're not going to see where they're at. It's guesswork until you find your little honey hole, and then you can get a lot. So just my recommendations, just some information. If you want to include it, you can. Keep it light. You don't want your bags to be too heavy. If it's something you want to add, then be the person that adds it. I'm not going to hold it against you, especially if you're like in the Pacific Northwest, where you have some fantastic fishing, or you're in Montana or northwestern Wyoming, or in Idaho. Idaho has some fantastic fishing also. When you start getting south, you get more catfishes and stuff like that. Not a good fish for me to eat. I don't like them as much as other people, but if I had to, I would. Whereas trout, amazing. Salmon, amazing. Steelhead, amazing. And all those you can get in lakes and rivers. Well, not salmon, steelhead, they have to come from the ocean, but yeah, just options. With all this knowledge, with all these gear, and that's all it is. It's an option. It gives you another option. If it's right for your environment, then get it. I'm not going to tell you no. All right, let's go find the next thing to talk about.